My project today that I'm here to share with you, I've been working on for the past 2 quarters in the FMP program. Currently it's titled, it's kind of changing, Women of Color, Intersectionality, and the California Prison to Employment Program. I want to start by giving kind of like a background motivation of what led me into the topic of formerly incarcerated women. And my interest really developed after seeing the experience of my late aunt and the effects that her repeated incarceration had on the lives of my cousins growing up, and how their lives developed differently because of her involvement with the criminal justice system. And so in looking at formerly incarcerated women, I wanted to understand their experiences, and in doing so I employ a feminist lens, which Bettina has been helping me with a lot, because I'm a sociology major, so working with feminist theory has been a bit of a stretch, but something I've become very comfortable with because it ties into my topic really well. So working within this perspective is where I find that the multiple identities women have and carry with them in their everyday lives intersect in ways that limit their chances to break away from the cycle of incarceration. So, go back there. So just to give you a general idea of what my project actually is I focus on the state of California, and currently California has 34 correctional facilities, 4 of which are designed for women in particular. As a result of conditions of a severe overcrowding that California experienced, in 2001, the California Supreme Court was presented with a case called Brown versus Plata, in which California prisoners were, the case argued that California prisoners were suffering cruel and unusual punishment because of overcrowding. Medical and mental health services provided for these prisoners lacked severely. And as a result, the ruling of the court in this particular case mandated the release of nonviolent offenders in order to reduce the overcrowding in prisons, expecting the release of approximately 40,000 prisoners. The state of California developed reentry programs that aggressively targeted issues of high unemployment among recently released individuals. In response, in 2008, the California New Start Prison to Employment Program was created. This is the newest program that connects recently paroled individuals with employment opportunities in their communities. The purpose of my project is to connect how the services this program provides answers to the specific needs women of color have as they re-enter their communities. In doing so, this project employs a theory of intersectional analysis in an effort to understand how the multiple socially constructed categories of race, class, gender, and sexuality affect women's lives. In order to analyze this program and the women who participate in it, I analyzed websites and publicly available information for content. In addition to that, I conducted interviews with program administrators and women to gain insight to how the program works and to fill in the gaps that the public information out there on the program doesn't really answer. The responsiveness of this program to the needs of women of color is important because women of color make up a large majority of the women behind bars in California. In order to reduce the levels of recidivism, stable employment is crucial because it is a key indicator of the potential success a parolee has. So I begin by looking at women in California prisons to give you a background of the social problem that I deal with in my project. During the course of this project, I've sought to understand who incarcerated women are, where they come from, what types of crimes did they commit and why, and how perception around these women has changed and how it's been seen through policies. Incarcerated women are characteristically described as being poor, undereducated, underemployed, mothers, many of them welfare recipients. 80% of women incarcerated are, 86%, of women incarcerated report being mothers, primary caretakers of their children at the time of their arrest, whereas 26% of men report being fathers at the time of their arrest. So more mothers are being incarcerated than fathers, which means that more mothers are being detached from their children to serve time behind prison. African American women and women of color in general are incarcerated at higher rates than white women. African American women experience a rate of 149 per 100,000 women, whereas Latinas are incarcerated at a rate of 75 per 100,000 women. So consequently, they make up a large proportion of the prison population in California. Many of these women also have histories of drug abuse and alcohol abuse. Among the highest offenses reported, women are mostly incarcerated for drug offenses and property offenses, and these are linked to their issues with drug violence, drug abuse. So 65% of incarcerated women are women of color, and primarily a lot of them consist of drug abuse. So in California, the criminal justice system falls short in meeting the needs of women with substance abuse issues. 50% of incarcerated women report having addiction problems or histories of addiction at the time of their arrest. Many of the issues that women enter prison with are still obstacles for them once they leave prison, because the prison system is not addressing their issues fully. So in the time that they're in prison, though they may detox, they're not given the treatment that they need to be able to counter the effects or the availability of drugs in their communities once they are released, because prison treatment programs are only within the facility, and women experience limited sources of assistance once they are released from prison. So this is seen in the repeated offenses that women are incarcerated in. So in turn, this affects their chances of attaining employment and successfully completing parole. Only 11% of women successfully complete parole, where 39% will reoffend within 3 years of their release. So, So for my project, I used the theory of intersectionality. So here, I'll explain it so we can see how it ties into their lives. Reentry programs are unlike any other social assistance programs because they are orientated, at least in theory, to address the difficulties that parolees have as they attempt to remake their lives. Issues that affect women in general, and in particular persons of color, are often unaddressed because dominant legal and criminal justice discourses fail to recognize them fully. In order to understand the complex class that women of color represent, in particular Black women, I employ the theory of intersectionality. Using Kimberly Crenshaw's work in Mapping the Margins, Intersectionality, Identity Politics, and Violence Against Women, she discusses the multiple facets that women of color experience marginalization. Intersectionality is described as the interlocking systems of oppression. They are the result of systems of oppression. So these systems, there's two main ones that I focus on in my project, a patriarchal system of gender and a race code that provides images allegedly defining the essential nature of Black women. A woman's race and criminal characteristic intersect as a result of these systems of oppression. Women are also racialized, sexualized, and in a class position. So it is within this framework that many women can also be mothers and have multiple problems with addiction and destructive emotional patterns, which we see in their drug abuse and drug offenses. Therefore, to understand how these socially constructed identities of race, class, gender, and sexuality affect the everyday lives, each identity must be understood as equally important and overlapping. No one identity of a woman can be given attention without addressing the conditions of the other. For instance, Black women, Crenshaw argues, are categorized and simultaneously subjugated because of their difference from white women and Black men. Black men are subjected to racism, not so much sexism because of the hegemonic patriarchal system of gender. On the other hand, Black women are subjected to both racism and sexism because they are neither white women nor Black men. I argue that the same view can be used to look at incarcerated women or formerly incarcerated women in my project, and women of color more generally. As women, they are subjected to the sexist treatment within the criminal justice system. Prostitution is illegal in many states, including California. Women are penalized for prostitution, although for many of them, it's seen as a way to make a living. Men who use prostitutes, however, are not equally subjected to arrest in the same manner. In addition, while cavity searches are routinely used in incarcerated women and men, they are particularly invasive to women. Because women are criminalized and considered deviant, these searches are permitted. The legal and criminal justice system here pays little attention to the rights that women have to their bodies, because their identity as a criminal takes precedence over a more humane and less punitive treatment. So the way I look at this, I use this framework is to understand that formerly incarcerated women of color, you cannot separate their identity as a woman of color from their class status because it's all interlinked. And so you have to understand them as their identities intersect in different ways. So, yeah. As women of color re-enter society, they experience what's considered competing demands. So by this I mean that they have a limited time frame to, as mothers, gain parental rights for their children, find stable employment, and find housing, all which are needed in order for them to get their kids back. What women need are extensive substance abuse treatment programs following prison so that they have a better chance at sobriety, which they would then need if they were to get a job. So I look at what women need for them to be able to get a job is for them to be sober and for them to have some type of, to develop a place, to find a place within themselves and in their communities after their time served in prison. So, yeah. In addition, women need job training and education in order to be able to qualify for full-time jobs that also provide them with medical and mental health benefits they need in order to be able to stay healthy and function well. Since a high percentage of women that are incarcerated have health issues related to HIV and a lot of mental health issues with depression, and the reasons why their drug offenses are linked to their mental health issues. So a lot of women use drugs to cope with depression and cope with feeling the experiences that they live with being a marginalized class. So using this, I look at how these needs are met by this employment program that California has. The program's called California New Start Prison to Employment Program. It began in 2008, and it's currently still running, but they're cutting the program at the end of this year because of budget cuts. But I look at this program because I found that in a lot of the literature, they argue that, scholars argue that programs help people once they are in prison, but once they leave prison, they are released. There's very few assistance programs that they're able to qualify for. So this program is new, and it's comprehensive in the sense that it extends their assistance to out-of-prison life. So it works in two parts. The first part is a transition program that takes place 6 months prior to a prisoner's release.